The convicted terrorist who plotted to bomb the MCG will be released from prison. Victoria's Supreme Court ruled that Abdul Nacer Benbrika can live with his family out in the community under an extended supervision order. It replaces a continuing detention order, which was keeping Benbrika behind bars beyond his sentence. For more analysis, let's bring in live now Professor of Global Islamic Politics at the Alfred Deakin Institute, Greg Barton. Greg, always appreciate you making the time for us. Thank you. Just explain for us how tricky it is to actually assess the risk surrounding the release of a convicted terrorist like Benbrika.
Well, Ash, we'd like to believe that we have the sort of minority report type tools that let us see inside somebody's head and anticipate what they might do and therefore step in to prevent them committing a crime. We don't have those tools. They never will exist. We have some, basic tools that tell us whether somebody's shifting their thinking, and for professionals working closely with somebody over time, that can be helpful, but there's no way of knowing what somebody might do next, whether because they're lying or because they succumb to temptation. So we have to put checks and balances in place. Now, we're told that Abdul Nacer Benbrika has shown good progress in the rehabilitation program in the Victorian prison system, and that's an improvement over where it was 3 years ago when he was given that continuing detention order. But no one's taking it for granted that you can just assume there's no risk.
We've seen the opposition today really slamming this decision. They're saying that this is dangerous for the community. What are those safeguards in place to try to prevent any further actions from him?
Well, first of all, any governor of the day is limited by what the court allows. Mark Dreyfus was told he wouldn't be getting another controlled continuing detention order. Instead, he could apply for an extended supervision order. That has been granted. It's just for a 12-month period. It can be renewed after 12 months. It imposes 30 conditions, including things like an ankle bracelet for tracking. He's not allowed to work or volunteer without permission from the AFP. He can't communicate with extremists, including some family members in Australia or abroad. So he's really limited. He's under close surveillance, more than he would be without that extended supervision order. And that's just to make sure that he doesn't come under pressure or succumb to temptation or otherwise end up influencing others who had extreme views. He may have shifted his position. We don't know for sure, but these checks are necessary to limit the risk.
Greg, while I've got you, I did want to ask you about the situation in the Middle East. As we've been reporting, tensions have really been rising between Hezbollah and Israel. Is a new war in Lebanon now inevitable, do you think?
Well, let's pray that's not the case, Ash. 41 years ago, in June 1981, Israel invaded Lebanon. It laid siege to Beirut. In the end, over 20,000 lives were lost, a bit like what's happening with Gaza at the moment. It was a terrible thing. The IDF proved very effective militarily, but it didn't solve the problems of Lebanon. That led directly to the creation of Hezbollah, which is the current threat because of its links with Iran. And then, of course, in 2006, there was another occupation of southern Lebanon. Neither of those large military operations solved the problem. I mean, the danger for Israel is a bit like a man with a hammer in his hand. Everything looks like a nail. The IDF is extremely professionally capable, but not every problem can be solved with military force. And that's been a bitter lesson that Israel has learned, or should have learned over the decades, particularly with respect to Lebanon. So everyone sort of understands that no one wants a war, including Iran, including Hezbollah, including Lebanon and Israel. But the danger is that you sort of, by incremental mistakes, escalations, we trip into one. And that would be disastrous for everyone, including for Israel, because mighty as it is, we've seen that military force doesn't solve these problems. It just leads to them cascading and becoming worse.
And when we look at things cascading, I mean, how far could this spread?
Well, we're already, we're seeing a serious threat posed by Iran-linked Houthi rebels in Yemen. So that shipping through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, is being limited. And we've had a request for Australia to send a Navy asset to assist the US in keeping that waterway safe. That's already a sign of escalation. I think the signs are that Iran actually doesn't want a full-on war. It recognises that it would stand to lose more than it would gain. And that's one reason why we aren't seeing that happening at the moment. But, as we just discussed, these things have a way of cascading and catching up on you when you don't plan to go in a certain direction. So It's a reminder of the imperative to try and solve the issue in Gaza. I know it can't be solved easily or quickly, and Israel has to deal with the threat posed by Hamas, but that keeps generating other threats. The Houthis in the south, Hezbollah in the north, Iran. Iran is not a monolith, so there are many who don't want a war with Israel, but there are some in that Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps regime who would want a war, who are more hawkish. And the danger always is that they might prevail or engineer a situation to allow them to escalate.
Greg Barton, appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash.